You know what time it is. Let's get this show on the road. The Boston Celtics just got their first win of the Eastern Conference Finals to bring the series back to 3-1, beating the Miami Heat 116-99 on the road.
Final is going to be Boston on top, 116-99. Big win, avoiding elimination as they outscore Miami 66-43 in the second half and come up with a win and keep this series extending.
All right, guys, just like I said in the intro, you know what time it is. We are here to do one thing and one thing only. We are here to talk about the Boston Celtics picking up their first win of the conference finals in South Beach, and boy, was it a sight for sore eyes. Look at the NBA and the NHL playoffs. In the conference finals, every team had either gone up 3-0 or fallen down 3-0. It looked like we were destined for a sweep because the Miami Heat had a 6-point lead. They were undefeated at home in the playoffs. They were 11-3 against the spread. They were finally favored for a change. You really didn't expect them to drop it. And of course, the Celtics mount a comeback win. But guys, before I jump into my analysis and give you some insights for the rest of the series and potentially the NBA Finals, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button. Really means a lot to me, helps me out a lot. Like the video if you enjoy it, and drop a comment. Let me know, do you think Boston is going to do the impossible? Are they about to come back from 3-0? Are they going to be the first team in NBA history to do it? They're from Boston. The Boston Red Sox came back from 3-0 in the ALCS in 2004 against the New York Yankees, by the way, and Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez were at this game. Is that foreshadowing? Is it symbolism? Is it a sign of something to come? Who knows? But if you want to be with me throughout all of it, like I said, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, drop a like on the video. Okay, let's get right into it. This was a Jayson Tatum, not emergence, because he's been performing well in these playoffs and in this series, but he has been disappearing in the fourth quarter. He hadn't made a field goal in the fourth quarter in this entire series until tonight. But boy, did he step up to the plate. And again, Heat went up in the halftime up 6. Tatum only had 9 points. Kind of looked like it was going to be time to get the brooms out. But Tatum said nope. He came out, dropped 24 points in the second half, finished this game with an awesome stat line, 33 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists. We were on the over of Tatum rebounds, which is 10.5. He comes through, he gets us 11 against the odds for plus money. Wrote that in an article earlier. If you guys don't know, I'm actually a sports journalist by trade. You can check my work out in Forbes and a bunch of other publications. Hopefully one more coming soon. That's going to be my big announcement if it comes through, but we still got a ways to go for that. So hopefully we're just going to keep our fingers crossed from now. Getting back on track here, Jaylen Brown, he had 17 points. Wasn't that good. He was the team's second leading scorer, and he shot 7 of 16 from the field, which is not great. I mean, it's not awful, but you could look at that and say, okay, well, maybe he's starting to gain his confidence. His jump shot looked awful, and he bricked some free throws. He had one free throw that barely got to the rim because he was just so out of rhythm. Had 4 rebounds and 4 assists to boot. The Boston Celtics, though, the supporting cast, they did their job. The Celtics shot 41% from 3. Al Horford got them going early. He had 3 threes early into the second quarter. Grant Williams made 4 threes off the bench. Malcolm Brogdon still doesn't really have it cooking, and he's really getting outplayed, which can't happen as a 6th man of the year. You can't be getting outplayed by Gabe Vincent and Kyle Lowry. Vincent was also good in this game. We're going to talk about him in a moment. And then Derek White, sensational defense all night long, was able to bury a couple of triples himself. Good game from him. Jimmy Butler had 29 points for the Heat. He took him 21 shots to get there. He shot 9 of 21. And sometimes you can look at 9 of 21 in the playoffs and say, okay, well, it's the playoffs. It's a defensive battle. It's a back and forth. Is he scoring when he needs to? Is he getting the momentum shots? The answer to those questions was no. He really struggled to find his touch. Well, first of all, he couldn't go to his patented mid-range later in the game. I mean, Grant Williams just straight up stuffed him without even really leaving his feet. And then he just couldn't get shots to fall from close range. He missed a wide open layup. He missed some putbacks. Just not what you normally see from Butler and what you haven't seen from him in these playoffs. But if anybody's deserved a game off, a game in which he had 29 points and 9 rebounds, it's Jimmy Butler. They've got a cushion. He could afford it. Gabe Vincent, like I mentioned, another good game from him. Yeah, it's coming off of a lifetime high, at least in college and the professional ranks. I don't know what he did in high school. I'm going to assume maybe he scored more than 29 in an AAU game or something. But he had 29 points, 27 or 29. Don't quite remember it in the game prior. He had 17 points tonight, but he did sprain his ankle about halfway through the fourth quarter. Now, he went to the locker room, got some quick treatment, came back out onto the court for a couple of minutes before he was withdrawn, as it looked like the Celtics were clearly going to win that game. I didn't like that decision. I think there was really no hope of a comeback happening. You have an extremely capable backup point guard in Kyle Lowry. Just leave Lowry in there. Let Vincent get some treatment. You don't want to risk aggravating it. And Vincent, it was a good sign that he was able to get back out there. But if he is damaged going into game 5, that could be a sign of trouble. Caleb Martin also continuing to be the best bench player in the playoffs and has a case, strangely, of being the best player in this series. He had 16 points. He's shooting 46% from three in this series, giving him great defense. Really good game from him. So let's just talk about the game itself. The Boston Celtics kind of assumed control of this game really early. They jumped out, but then it was just a heat onslaught. They were winning 30-23 at the end of the first quarter. They were doing a phenomenal job of getting back in transition and then also exposing the holes in the Celtics defense on the other end. The Celtics, they've made a living off of switching everything on defense. And normally it's a lot tougher to break teams down that can do that. But what the Heat were doing was they were able to get downhill with Butler and Adebayo and Vincent, and they were able to do the kick, swing, and they were pretty much consistently finding somebody open in the corner. If that wasn't working, they were driving again. The defense was collapsing. They dished it off to Bam, whoever was cutting on the inside. They're creating a bunch of open opportunities for themselves. Now, the Celtics did have active hands throughout the first half, even when they were losing, and that was very good to see. And because of that, even though they went into halftime trailing, I was confident as the Celtics money line better in this game that the Celtics were going to be able to pull this game out because their defensive effort has just not been there. Joe Mazzulla hit the nail on the head, and I've been critical of Mazzulla, but I do think that he's being pushed out of his league. He's just in a little over his head, so anything you get from him right now is a bonus. But he hit the nail on the head when he said that the Heat, keep mixing the teams up. But he hit the nail on the head when he said that the Celtics have been right there and they just haven't been able to close out quarters well. And they also, when their shots aren't falling, their defensive intensity starts to slack off. I think that was spot on. And the Celtics, they couldn't necessarily get their offense churning in the early parts of the game, but they were fighting for rebounds. They were diving for loose balls. They were getting active hands, breaking up passes, slowing down the transition. So that was very good to see. And like I said, it made me confident. But the Heat did have the halftime lead. They were making their threes. Jimmy Butler had it going. Like I said, Caleb Martin was off to a sensational start to that game. And the speed of the Miami Heat's defensive recoveries, when they are mismatched or when they're recovering or when they're blitzing and then getting back on the initial defender, because the Heat were sending blitzes at Tatum pretty much all night long. Not every trip, but it was a regular theme throughout the entire game. But their speed getting back to their spots is just incredible to watch. And that's all coaching. That's all fundamentals. That's all drills. And it's also conditioning, by the way, that I must say. But it was really good half from the Heat. All the pressure was on the Celtics coming out of that second half. And Jayson Tatum stepped up to the plate. The other players were good. Marcus Smart was good. He made his shots. Grant Williams was good. Al Horford was good. Robert Williams was good. But they don't win that game if Jayson Tatum doesn't have a classic superstar performance. I was having a conversation with some of my buddies about whether or not Jayson Tatum has that dog in him. And I sort of had the position that, look, the dog might get out of the yard every once in a while. The owner might have to go run around the neighborhood to collect him. But Tatum has that dog in him. He's not the clutchest player in the league. He's not my number one draft pick to take the final shot. But Tatum, he's young. He's still 25. I mean, that's not young in basketball years, but it's young in life years. And when you think about Michael Jordan didn't win a championship until he was 28. LeBron James didn't win a championship until he was 27. Tatum's not quite at that timeline yet. And think about what he's done. He's made the playoffs every year of his career. He's been to the conference finals 4 times in 6 years. He could be on his way to making the finals twice in those 6 years. I mean, you'd have to pull a 3-0 comeback, but if he does that, that certainly helps this clutch conversation. But this is what I expected from Tatum. I didn't think he was going to go run and hide. And yes, the bad first half, it doesn't really mean a whole lot with Tatum. He's so streaky. He has that confidence in himself. If you ever doubted it, go look at the end of Game 6 in Philadelphia, backs against the wall, trailing. Tatum has one of the best quarters of his career after 3 truly horrendous quarters. So was I worried about Tatum? No, and he did not let me down. Like I said earlier, 24 points in the second half. He was setting his teammates up with all sorts of sweet dishes. very active on the rebounds, gave him great defense. I can remember a closeout on a shooter in the corner where he gets his fingertips on a three. I believe it was Gabe Vincent. I think that was the play where he sprained his ankle, actually. Very, very great game from Jayson Tatum, reminding everybody why he finished fourth in MVP voting. Now, the Tatum-Brown relationship. A lot has been made about that in years past. And everybody's been talking about they need to trade Jaylen Brown and get a different piece. And then once they made it to the finals last year, it was, look how far they got. Now they're just going to be more experience under the belt. They're going to be even better this year. Jaylen Brown makes second team all the NBA, averages 27 points. Tatum averages 30. There's a lot of hype about they can do it. Then they go down 3-0. It's all of a sudden, oh my gosh, we need to send Jaylen Brown out of town. Look, here's the bottom line. Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown do not complement each other. They just don't. They're a little too similar. They can coexist. They can coexist together. Does that have a hard cap on it that is lower than bringing in a complementary star? Just hypothetically, if you can find someone who has the same skill, ability, and impact as Jaylen Brown, but he's at a complementary position, then you would be better off getting rid of Jaylen Brown. But the simple fact is that trade doesn't just exist for you to go take it. Now, if you want to find out some trade scenarios that I have wrestling in the back of my mind, check out Ride the Line with myself and Tanner Kern on the WSN channel tomorrow. Podcast is going to be going out about noon or 1 Eastern. I'm going to break down my top 3 hypothetical Jaylen Brown trades. Hypothetical with the caveat that they've been approved by me, they've been approved by the trade machine, and they've been approved by the salary cap restrictions. So it all works. But like I said, check that out. Ride the Line by WSN, noon or 1 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday afternoon. That for my scenarios there. But Tatum, I'm starting to worry about him and specifically how he's responding to Brown. I don't think he's necessarily hated Brown. I know Jaylen's been sort of mercurial and he's had some strange comments. I don't think Tatum has necessarily given up on him, at least in the past. But tonight, maybe I'm making it up. It just seemed like there was a little more ISO ball. Jaylen, when it's my turn, you just go stand over there. Don't even think about touching the ball. And whenever Jaylen was getting the ball, it was like, okay, there's no chance that I'm passing this ball. I'm going straight up with it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. There were reports that this team has sort of accepted that it's been forced to like each other for longer than it actually has. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know what's going on. I'm just telling you that it wasn't looking good from a team morale standpoint. Jaylen Brown still wasn't good in this game, but they got the win. And winning solves everything. They're going back to their home court where they weirdly have not been good in the playoffs. They've been better on the road, but still, you've got the TD Garden support behind you. I really think that if they're going to turn this thing around, you're going to see it early on in Game 5. Are they going to have the same team spirit? Are they going to have the trust, the faith in one another? Who knows? But I'm looking forward to seeing it. Now, as far as the actual Game 5 itself, the Celtics are favored by 8 points. And I don't love that because let's flash back to the first 2 games in this series where they were favored by just about 8 points in both of those. Yeah, how did that work out for them? Not good. The Miami Heat won both of those games, and the Celtics were favored on the road in Miami in Game 3, and they lost that one as well. Finally, the Heat were favored, and like I said, they lost. So favorites all against the spread and against the money line too, are 0-4 in this series. Very, very weird phenomenon that we've got going on here. Let's look back at last year as well, by the way, because Jimmy Butler, I know he had an off night tonight or whenever you're hearing this Tuesday night, but last year in the conference finals with his team trailing 3-2, they go back to Boston for Game 6. He has 47 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. They walk out of there with a win and get it back to South Beach. This is Jimmy Butler, guys. There's no situation that's too big for him. There's no adversity that he doesn't want to overcome. He wants the big shots. Boston is also only 8-8 against the spread in this series, in this playoffs, whereas the Heat are 11-4, including tonight's result. And Jimmy Butler, in those first 2 games of this series on the road in Boston, he averaged 31, 6.5, and 6.5. So with all of that being said, I think it's pretty straightforward here. I have the Heat covering the spread of +8. Do I think they're going to win straight up? I think Tatum is going to have another strong late game. It's really going to depend how can the Celtics close out the quarters and can they manage to be the ones who are ahead in that 10, 8, 6-minute marks, those 10, 8, 6-minute marks in the fourth quarter. Because I don't think you can be behind 4 or 5 points with Joe Mazzulla going toe-to-toe with Eric Spoelstra in the coaching battle. I think you have to have the advantage. Again, you have to be up 3-4 points, and you've got to be able to put Tatum in a position where if you miss it, it's not like the end of the world. Maybe we're going to go to overtime, or maybe we're going to have to come back and hit a shot on the next possession. And not that it's on Tatum. Again, I think it's on the Mazzulla Spoelstra coaching battle. You want to be in front. I think Boston is going to be able to do that. Grant Williams, again, gave them great minutes off the bench, and role players played better at home. Malcolm Brogdon, I think he's a little more than a role player for this team, but he's been awful. You got to think that he's going to be in better spirits going back to TD Garden. Off the top of my head, I have the Celtics winning this game. That's not the bet because the Heat could easily win it, but I've got the Heat covering the +8. I had a futures bet on the Heat to win this series. Feeling pretty good about that, but I also had a futures bet, my favorite bet on this series, going over 5.5 games. So weirdly, I'm in a very tough spot as a bettor. I'm rooting for the Heat to cover the +8, but I'm also rooting for the Heat, for the Celtics to win the games so that we go to Game 6, and then I'll be rooting for the Heat to win that Game 6. Yeah, very strange position to be in. But guys, what's not a strange position to be in is being a subscriber to the channel. I am posting insights, analysis, reactions to all of the games regularly. And once the playoffs wrap up, I'm going to have a bunch more engaging content. I've got full-length podcasts on the channel, everything, you name it. Please subscribe to the channel. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. And I will see you guys all back for my recap of Game 5 in Boston. Until then, thank you so much and have a great day.